It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Suicide Sucks podcast, where we have real conversations about mental health. So my guests today, we've both got tea. I always like to let people know what we're having. We've got a cup of tea, the sun is shining. Ozzy is with us. He seems to be curled up in a little ball though, even though it's quite warm. And my guest today is Patricia. Now, Patricia's mental health spiralled after the birth of her first child in 2013, and she felt trapped in an unhealthy and abusive relationship, and by her second pregnancy she'd reached her lowest point. And after her second child was born, they became homeless, and basically, we're going to hear her story today and how she fought to rebuild her life. She's been diagnosed with complex PTSD, and she's now a peer supporter and founder of Hope, which we're going to find out about later as well. So thank you very much, Patricia, for joining us. Do you prefer Patricia or do you have any nicknames or anything?
As long as it's not Pat,
Oh,
I will
really?
answer to anything.
That's brilliant. I'm going to stick with Patricia. It's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
So welcome to the van. I always start with one question, and that is, can you tell us about one of your darkest days?
Oh, one of the darkest days. And there's been quite a few. Where to start? So, obviously we're here to talk about suicide. So, one of the darkest days, I think, for me was when I tried to commit suicide. It was quite a beautiful day like this, I suppose. And if you'd have looked at my life from the outside, you know, it was perfect. I had a beautiful little girl. I had a partner that appeared to be very doting to me and his family. But the reality was so much different. He would often just leave without any notice. Tell me that he was done, and that was the case on this day. I was pregnant with my second child, and I was just so low. I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to bring another child into that situation. I thought about abortion previously. But this day was just a day that I just needed to end it. I took my eldest child round to the neighbours. She was screaming, and he just said, "I need you to have her. I just can't do it anymore." And they were lovely, to be fair. They took her straight in. I went back into the little cottage, tried to end my life. I wasn't successful. I was very lucky, I guess, in a way, that nothing worked. So I went downstairs, and at that point I could hear my daughter crying, and I knew,
Next door?
yeah, and I just knew that there was nobody else that could look after her, you know. Obviously, the police and the ambulance had been called. There was obviously worries about my safety and the children's safety, and I think the aftermath of that day and what followed will probably haunt me for the rest of my life, to be fair. Having the police appear in your house, is scary enough. But I lived in Derby and my family's from Wakefield. So they phoned my family to come and get me, to make sure that I was safe. My family's not great.
Right, I was going to say, I mean, were they supportive?
No, my dad didn't come and get me. It was left to my grandparents and my mum. At that point, it felt like his job was much more important, which isn't great. I mean, as I look back on it now, I can understand. He lost his cousin to suicide, and it will have hit home, I think. He's a military man, so any kind of emotions is just not talked about. But in that moment, I needed my dad, So it was tough. It was very tough.
And that kind of stays with you as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
That feeling of rejection, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can sit here and you can think about you can rationalise it, can't you, with yourself, Like, I know why my dad will have behaved in the way, but it doesn't make it any easier to have experienced it, And I think often people, when you're talking about it, I think when you've tried an attempt, you are more aware of everybody else and their needs far more than anybody understands. You are so caught up in what is right for everybody else and whether you're providing that, rather than the stigma that you are selfish and you're just doing it, and it's difficult when you can sit there and you can rationalise it to that extent, and people will say to you that, well, actually, he shouldn't have done that. He should have been there, and he should have been, absolutely. But
Have you talked to him about it since?
He will. He still doesn't really understand. He's an amazing man, and he's the kind of man that, if you were somebody in need, he would absolutely be there for you. But if you were a family member, it's a different story. So he works with people that have mental health needs themselves now, and he has done so much growing, and I can see that, and I'm so proud of how far he has come, but the impact it's had on me over the years. Still.
Yeah. So what happened following on from that then? So obviously your mum and grandparents came to get you.
Yeah.
I mean, they were in Wakefield, you were in Derby.
Yeah.
What happened? How did it...
I had to go back to Wakefield just for a short while. We had obviously social workers and things involved. So the help that was offered was actually quite good at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. The difference between then and now is vast. And in some ways it's better, in some ways it's not. But...
And sorry, when was this?
So this was 2014.
Right, yeah.
So we had social workers involved. We had, they were called children's centres at that point.
Yes.
So we had a children's centres worker, we had the health visitor. So we did have quite a lot of support. So after a period of time, I moved back to Derby to be with my ex-partner, which is just, when you but you just never know.
No.
You can't get out of it, can you, until... and then my middle child was born. And that was a tale in itself, to be fair. So for me, pregnancy should be spontaneous. It should be a surprise. And we didn't find out the sex. We didn't do anything like that with my eldest. We did have a C-section, but I went into labour naturally, and it just ended in that. But because I was so isolated, really, my mum said she needed her date to come and help with the children. She didn't, but I had to book an elective C-section.
Right.
And I hated knowing what his birth date would be. And that really impacted me quite a lot. And
It's like a motorway on here today. Jeez.
and so he came along.
And did anybody at the time talk to you about, because I interviewed somebody last year, and they talked about, oh my God, and the phrasing I've forgotten. What's that? What do you call it after you've had a baby?
So postnatal.
Postnatal.
Yeah.
And there's prenatal depression as well,
There is, yeah.
which was a whole new thing to me. So I
Yeah.
mean, that would possibly have been partly what you were
Yeah,
struggling
absolutely. So they did say that I had postnatal depression at the time. But the problem with being a mother and accessing services is that you have a child, and often you can't leave your child. And these services want you to go into therapy without no child.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're in a relationship, so like with mine, like I don't drive, so I was really like reliant on him to go pick up prescriptions. So often I'd have meds in my system and then go for like 2 weeks without it in my system. So then you're bringing that whole cycle through again. You know, and there's loads of side effects that go with having to restart it and things like that. So, I mean, now we have wonderful, I don't know if you have it over here, but where we are, it's called Pharmacy to You.
Sorry, we're just looking at
It's all right.
the children out the window. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
can. I think you can access that
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
So that's brilliant because it just gets delivered straight to your door. You know, so if you are not able to get out and about, you know,
I
you
don't
can...
think a lot of people know about that. Is there a cost to it?
So if you are able to get your medication for free anyway, then it is completely free, including delivery.
Right.
Obviously, if you were to have to pay for your medication, then you'd need to pay that prescription.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if you'd have to pay for delivery.
Maybe. Yeah, but I mean, a brilliant service.
It's amazing. It has
for those that
completely
can't
changed
get
my
out.
life. And it would have completely changed it back then. Just having that medication regular.
Yeah.
Been,
So you went to Wakefield for a bit,
yeah,
then went back.
yeah.
I imagine that wasn't great.
No. So within the first month, he'd kind of said, I've had it, I can't deal with it. So he left this time for good. He went to go live back with his nan. And I started to get life in order. We'd found some lovely playgroups, and then the realisation came that actually he hadn't been quite as truthful as what he had left out some pretty significant details with regards to like the rental agreement. So when we first rented together, he had put my name on it, so we were joint, so that I was covered. But when it came to renewing it, he took me off. So technically, I wasn't allowed to be in that house.
Oh my word.
Which then meant that I couldn't claim benefits because I had no home address. So then I couldn't pay the rent because I can't claim for anything. I had to live off food banks. At that point, though, that you could only get 3 parcels, and then you just left. So we had to make them 3 parcels. The workers I had were amazing, and they found little pots of money all over for me to access whilst I got sorted. And I think that was probably the best month I've had, that it was just me, and it was so freeing that we were able to do it. And I was finding bush routes, and I was going off and exploring and you know, and walking. So I had my eldest in the pram, and I had my youngest at the time. We baby wore, so he was strapped to me, and it was glorious. And then I decided that I'd take them up to Wakefield to see family up here. And the day before I was due to go back, I got a message from him explaining that he didn't think that the house was clean enough, suitable enough, any kind of reason for us to go back, and that I wasn't allowed to go back until he'd sorted it. And at that point I knew that we'd lost our home. We just did not have anywhere to go back to. So I had to ask my mum to say, I'm going to have to stay here. And
that's not easy.
No, not the relationship that we have either was really hard. I parent very differently to what my parents do, and there was a lot of judgment, and there was a lot of, you need to do it my way. And it really affected my mental health. So whilst we were up there, my parents are the ones that was, you know, you need to discipline them. Just give them a slap on the legs and they won't do it again. You know, when you're that vulnerable and you're that so low, you know, I slapped my eldest on her legs, and I was so disgusted with myself that, you know, I told social services, but then that obviously becomes a safeguarding issue.
Oh, no.
So I wasn't allowed to be unsupervised with my children. So I had to be shipped between my mum and dad's house. They would have to drop me off at my grandparents so that I had someone with me constantly.
Oh my word.
It was just horrendous.
And that's like, you know, that's one of those examples where you should have been given support and help.
Yeah.
But
It
instead...
gets worse.
Oh my word.
I know.
Oh no.
I had an amazing social worker, to be fair, and she knew that being in that environment was not helpful. So she pushed for my own house.
Right.
So I was really lucky. If you're waiting for council housing, it can take years.
Yeah.
She really pushed, and I was in Wakefield April, I think, 2016, and by August I'd got my own house and was able to move in. So that amount of time was astonishing. Like, it's just unheard of. But with a council house, you don't get anything, and we didn't have anything anyway, because we'd literally just had what we'd brought up.
Yeah.
So we had to start completely afresh. And of course, I think my parents were pretty sick of having me then. And it's hard because you want to make it your own home. And I was desperate to do the decorating.
Yeah.
And put my own little home touches on it. And my parents just would not watch the children whilst I did it. Which they were doing it for me. And I really am grateful that they were willing to help me, but it was my home, and sometimes I just wanted half an hour to just do a bit for myself. And in the end, my dad just lost his shit with me, to be fair.
Oh, really?
And he was like, these are not my kids. I've done mine. And this is not what I'm here for. So I just, felt very isolated and very just lonely.
Yeah.
This was, my mum was pushing so much for me to be back in Wakefield so that she could be helpful and be around the children. And it just doesn't happen. And I think we often talk about that village and needing it. But I think the generation we've been brought up by women that have firstly had that expectation of following that route of having marriage and then children. And sometimes those people aren't maternal. They are just following what society says that they should be doing.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, and I think nowadays people are choosing a different route, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because they believe that they've got a choice.
Exactly, and we should have a choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I don't think that my parents didn't love us. I think that if they had a different choice, life would have been very different for them. They're not the most maternal people I know, and they had rough childhoods too.
Yeah.
They had mums that were finding out how to work alongside having children because that had suddenly become the norm for them. And we've gone through so many different generations where things have changed quite rapidly of expectations for women.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
It's so hard for people to keep up and maintain all the connections and the community and the village that we all desperately need. No.
Totally agree.
It's just...
So you were, I mean, at least you've got a house.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yes. I've never been able to figure out why August is a massive trigger for me. So August comes and we've moved in fine. Everything seems perfect. But it must have been too much because my mental health just plummeted.
Right.
And at that point, nobody really spoke about what intrusive thoughts are. So I'm getting all these thoughts about harming myself or the children, and not like purposefully, but like on an accident, which would like set my anxiety just through the roof. So I was finding it hard to leave the house because I was so scared that the pram would run away into the road, and they're so vivid and they're so... You can't often tell what is reality and what isn't. And it got to one point where, this is quite graphic, is that okay?
Yeah.
So it got to one day and I needed some support, and I'd phoned up my mum and dad, and basically she'd lied about having time off. so that she wouldn't have to help me. She will swear blind that she told me, but she never told me. So I'm there and I'm struggling, and I put my son on my knee, and the thought enters my head that I've got his head and I've squashed it so hard that he has no head anymore. And you can see it and you can feel it, and it's so real. So I phoned up 999 and I'd explained that I'd killed my son. And obviously they come racing out and everything like that. And I'm so traumatised by it, and I've disassociated, and I'm in the hospital and fully believing, even though he's with me and I can see, it's still so real. So the doctors have checked him over, everything's completely fine. The social workers won't let them come home. So they have to go to my parents' house.
Oh, God.
So they're at my parents' house, and the social worker's explaining that it can take a few weeks to get everything sorted. And she's asking my parents if they would be willing to look after the children. And they're saying that they can't because of work. They can't take any time off. That they won't be...
Oh, my word.
They won't be, like, financially compensated for their time that they'd have to take off. So what turned into a couple of weeks turned into 9 months of being in foster care. They were taken on the 5th of September, and I'll always remember it because it's my mum and dad's anniversary. And it was just awful. I walked up to my mum's house and watched the social worker pop them in her car, and then walked home, and it was just heartbreaking that nobody, not his side of the family, nobody from my side of the family would have just helped for 2 weeks. You know, and all that time, you know, you still feel suicidal, you're still wondering why you're alive, what like your purpose is. But walking home that day, I knew that those kids only had me, you know, and that you can't take that away from them. And I don't think at that point it really like sunk in what that meant, because once they're in the system, it's really hard to get them back. So they could have been gone forever at that point.
And so what help and support did you get then, since making that phone call that you've had these intrusive thoughts, which I totally believe everybody has.
Yeah.
But they're so shit scary.
They are.
When you have them.
Yeah.
That you would never want to admit it.
No. I couldn't even wash my dishes at some point because I was so scared that if I put my hand in the water, like, I would cut myself. You know, and the way it affects your life is just astounding.
And if they just come and go, and you know, that's like that's fine.
Exactly,
you can park it almost. But yeah, there are times when
it starts bleeding in. Yeah. Absolutely.
So support.
Yeah.
Was there? What happened?
So in Wakefield we have Turning Point, which is talking therapies. I was too complex for them.
Right.
So they wouldn't touch me. And then we have like the community mental health team. So I had a CPN and...
What's a CPN?
A community...
Is it like a person that's allocated to you? Right,
yeah.
Okay.
So she would come out and see me, and the system itself is so broken, but the people that work within it can be so amazing.
Yeah.
And I had some amazing people rooting for me. So before the children went into foster care, I was underneath the community mental health team. And you get allocated a worker, but that relies on one person, and sometimes things happen.
Yeah.
She left. The next lady, I think, went either on maternity or illness. They must have had quite a lot of people leaving, and I just fell through the cracks. There wasn't a person allocated. And where do you turn? You know, you can't. And at that point, you know, you don't have any support from your family, really. The services that you're meant to rely on are falling apart from underneath your feet. So you just don't feel like you matter, really. You know, and I think that affects quite a lot of people within the system. You know, and even now, to this day, I am with the community mental health team, and the mistakes that they make, it's just stupid. And you want to believe that they're human, but you just know that there's not enough money in it, that they're overworked, and that these things shouldn't happen if we pushed and accepted that what we're getting given is the shit straw, really. You know.
Yeah. And often it comes at a time when somebody's been at their lowest and they've actually reached out.
Yeah.
And then to feel like
Absolutely.
you don't matter.
Yeah.
It's almost worse than
Exactly.
if you hadn't reached out.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
It is.
But so did you obviously got your kids back?
Yeah, it took 9 months. I had to do a lot of work. Lots of different medications, and being stable. I had to do a clinical psychiatrist report, which is where they figured out that I had complex PTSD.
Right.
Now, I think, this is obviously just my personal opinion, but I think that if we delve deeper into mums that have got postnatal depression and asked about their childhood and supported them through any feelings of what their childhood can bring, because, like I said, we've gone through so many generations of it just being hard for mums, and then that impacts on the children. You know, there's no two ways about it, that when you become a mum, you need to draw on your experiences of it, and that often comes from being a child and what that parent-child relationship is. And if you haven't had a good experience and you've tried to bottle it down, which was what mine was, suddenly you've got all those hormones and all those memories, and it's gonna cause you to be messed up, really. So if we were asking women, actually, how was your childhood? And taking it into account, then we could start helping, rather than just, you've got postnatal depression, here's some tablets.
Yeah.
Let's offer you some counselling that you can't attend because you've got a child and you can't leave it with anybody.
Yeah.
It
is being talked about more now, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That whole, like you say, how our own personal experiences affect where we are when we're pregnant, even with the whole prenatal depression as well.
Absolutely.
Which is obviously a good thing.
Yeah. Yes.
So you did lots of work, you had...
Yeah, and it's crazy because, it's so hard because the system can be set against you, and if I'd be sat in meetings and I'd be told that that I'd need to choose where I'd be sitting because I don't have an addictive personality, and there's people in the system that are not like me, and I don't want to be dragged into their world.
What?
Yeah, and it's awful because the lack of understanding of what those women are going through is never going to help them. You know, yes, there might be women that are taking drugs or using alcohol to cover up, but are you asking the reasons why? You know, we go back to that. Why? What has happened for them to need that?
Yeah.
You know, instead of sitting that stigma firmly on their shoulders, we need to be sitting alongside them and saying, how have you got here?
Exactly.
And what can we do to help you? But instead, what we're doing is we're creating such a divide, and we're pitting women against women. You know, I have absolutely no problem sitting alongside women that experience addiction and listening, because that's what they need sometimes.
Absolutely. And you'll obviously, you know, because of your experiences, and that's what I love about the podcast in a way, is that I personally don't think that anybody can heal from anything.
No.
Unless they're talking to people who have stood in your
Exactly.
shoes. You know, there's obviously a place for therapy and things, but I do think that connection and those relationships have to happen.
Absolutely.
In order for you to feel normal as well, and you know, not like alone,
Exactly.
basically.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, you're obviously incredibly passionate about helping others. You obviously have come out the other side now.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, do you still have intrusive thoughts?
Absolutely. You know, I think complex PTSD is something that you will just have to learn to live with. You know, you can't erase your past. You know, those memories and those experiences that happened are things that you will live with for the rest of your life. It's about how you manage the symptoms and how you manage the things that trigger you. You know, and just going back to that thing of having an addictive personality, you know, who's to say what you're addicted to is harmful or not? I mean, if you shove some biscuits in front of me, I will go all day long, you know. So just because someone above you has deemed what is right or wrong to put into your body doesn't mean that it's any different. You know, and it's just, it's hard when you go through life and, you know, a lot of people mask.
Yes.
You know, and you don't really know what's going on.
We're all very good at that, aren't we? Yeah.
And the judgment that goes with a lot of things, and, you know, the media has a lot to answer for. But like you say, you need empathy, and you need to be able to sit with people and go through life with them.
Absolutely. And so that brings us to the Patricia of today, and you have founded Hope.
Yeah.
So tell us what Hope is, how it came about.
We so I had my 2 eldest children, and I was a lone parent for a long time. And then I met my partner, and it healed so much of me that, you know, I think you have to be at a place ready to be healed before. So I wrote, a person can't heal you. You have to allow that healing to come from the experiences together.
Yes.
You know, so if anybody's listening to this, I don't want them to think that this has come from somebody else. You know, I've had to do it, and I've had to do the work to allow him to come into my life.
Exactly.
So he came along, and he hasn't had children, and he said he'd have loved his own, and he explained that he knew all about my last pregnancies, and that he understood that if it weren't ever going to happen, he'd be more than happy with my children and being a father to them. But I wanted to give him that experience, and I wanted to give me the experience of what motherhood and pregnancy can be like. I mean, I love my eldest too, and being their mum has been amazing. But journeying with somebody into parenthood, which it can change you. And if you do it with the right person, it's completely different. So going into pregnancy with my partner was scary, because I knew how it affected my mental health anyway.
Yeah.
So I went into it with very open eyes and started realising that things haven't changed in a decade. We still had massive waiting lists. Yeah. We still can't take children into places with us. And I thought, something needs to change. Women need somewhere to be themselves, where they can come along, they can sit with someone that's experienced lots of different things, that I can sit and I can listen to them. And the mental health services surrounding pregnancy is brilliant. And I did use them with my youngest, but it only lasts for 2 years. So once your child hits 2, then that service stops. And actually in Wakefield, it doesn't even matter if you're in the middle of any therapy or anything.
Oh, really?
So for myself, I've been battling for nearly a decade to try and get some proper trauma therapy to deal with things. And we just started delving into it when I was told that actually it needed to stop. So then I was told that I needed to be stable for a year before I could reach out to the community mental health team. But I've completely gone against that. Yeah. So I am with the community mental health team, but the person that I've been linked up with is now on sick. Yeah. And it's just the same stories. It's
often the consistency.
Exactly. So I wanted somewhere that we could come, that children of all ages were welcomed. Yeah. Because you don't suddenly stop struggling when your children's 2.
No.
You know, it's just crazy. And I've got an 11-year-old, and sometimes I struggle more with her than what I do the youngest. Yeah. So having somewhere that you can come along and just be like, oh, do you know what? It's hard, without any waiting times.
Yeah. So it's a physical, not physical, an actual place that you can come along to. Is it in Wakefield?
Yeah. So we are in the little hub, which is a lovely little community space in Flanshaw in Wakefield. And at the moment we have a play group. So I found a lot of the techniques that the mental health teams teach you are often for you to go away and do. Whereas if you're a mum at home, you don't have that space and you don't have that capacity to take yourself away. So at the moment we've got a little play group, and if mums want to, I can teach them how to do these coping strategies whilst they're playing.
Brilliant.
Because A, we need to incorporate in daily life, and B, if we're wanting to raise children, they need to see it. You know, if we're wanting children that are able to regulate themselves, then they need to learn it.
Absolutely. I think that is so important. It's the whole modelling thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I remember a time for me where I was at a real low. Sorry to digress, but and I'd done my back in and couldn't do anything but read, and ended up reading a mindful book, Mindfulness for Women.
Yeah.
And it asked these questions about where do you see yourself, and I was just in floods of tears because I couldn't see beyond today, you know. And then through the process of that, I've lost my train of thought now. The process of that, what were you talking about?
So learning and doing that.
So the process of that was, it was telling you that you should practice mindfulness and meditation and all of this. And it was always something I'd loved and wanted to do, but it was always at the bottom of the list.
Exactly.
So you never had time for it.
No.
And you always felt guilty
Yeah.
for doing it as well. And then I thought, what am I on about? This is a brilliant way to teach my children that you need to put yourself first sometimes.
Yeah.
So I actually started consciously, like I'd put a sign on the door saying, I'm having 15 minutes to meditate and just me time.
Yeah.
And suddenly the guilt went, because I thought, oh, I'm teaching them a lesson.
Yeah.
We're modelling. And you're
Precisely.
so right.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that, and also it takes away the embarrassment as well if you just do it in front of you.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And it's amazing how quickly children pick it up, you know, like it just becomes second nature so fast.
Yeah.
And it's things that we have every day in our life. You know, we can have a little bottle of bubbles, you know, and every kid loves bubbles.
Yeah.
But as a mum, if you are feeling anxious, just to sit and you take a deep breath in, and then you blow your worries into the bubbles.
Oh, I love
and watch them float away.
And pop them.
Exactly. And just, you know, you can model something that's so simple like that to your child. And it just
absolutely
changes
love
them.
that. And you can even say to the child, can't you? We're popping my worries away.
Yeah. And it's just amazing. So we do have a play group. The only thing is that I find it so hard for me, knowing where I went through. It's getting people out of the door and into a physical space. So the next thing for me is, I don't know if you heard of Maternal Journal. No. So Maternal Journal is, it's like a therapy session that loads of women have come together, and they've put a book together that you can sit and it guides you through different creative processes, which is wonderful. But often you have your children there. So I've changed it slightly so that we can sit with our children and create with them, so that they are getting into journaling. And the reason why my eldest just loves colouring and drawing, she's so artistic, and the way that it calms her is amazing. So if we can sit and work through that together with our children, it's just simple things like sitting and assigning emotions a colour, so that if you're feeling something and you can't express it, you can grab that colour and scribble it out, you know, and just things
so
like that.
Simple but effective.
Exactly. So that's going to be an online course, so that women that can't get out or are struggling to leave the house and are feeling isolated can log on and do it.
Yeah.
Because I'd love to do a video to do it, but I think the community is important as well.
Yeah.
So you need to allow that space, which is why it'll be like on a Zoom or anything like that.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah. And if somebody's listening and they're near Wakefield, when do you get together?
So Thursdays is our main play date sessions. So they are Thursdays afternoons.
Bless you, Ozzy.
And they run from 1 p.m. till 2:30.
You're going to have to repeat that. So
Thursdays at 1 p.m. until 2:30 in the afternoon.
Right.
And like I say, you don't need to have your kids to come along.
Right.
You can, if you want to spend your time that is child-free with us, then you're more than welcome to come along. There's always snacks and
can you just turn up?
Yeah.
Or do you need to get in touch?
There is a booking link, but I know that can be an extra barrier.
Yeah.
So
you can just turn up. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And if people want to find out about Hope, are you on Facebook and things?
Yeah, so Facebook, I'm a bit old school, so Facebook's more my jam than Instagram.
Yeah,
I do try to update
me
both.
too.
Yeah. Instagram I just can't.
I'm with you, I know.
Oh, but yes, I do try to do both.
Yeah.
But Facebook is the main place.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Patricia, thank you so much
Thank you
for joining me in the camper van, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this beautiful sunny day.
It is, thank you.
Thank you.
It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.